All right, let's take a look at the Sell-Thru Read-Thru report. How we get there is to go to the Author Analytics menu item and then selecting the Series Sell-Thru Read-Thru option. I've selected one of the series. This is all test data, so we're just trying to throw a bunch of stuff in here to give you some idea of what's going on. I've also selected a specific month because, again, test data, so it just makes it a little bit easier. I do have a whole bunch of data in here, and we'll show that a little bit later. You can select the marketplace, so you can choose the various marketplaces we offer. You can also select the KENP page rate if you'd like, so that way you can control how the page read section is calculated. And you can either choose the author's manually entered prices, meaning that you have gone in and clicked each one of these and entered the actual price of the book and the KENP delivery fee for the book, which you can find in the actual help documentation on how to do that. I'm not going to cover that specifically here. And also the KENPC pages, so how many pages, if you're doing this on Kindle Unlimited, how many pages are actually comprising each one of the books. If you decide to go with the calculated net prices based on the income during the specific time frame, we'll actually take the number of downloads, the total amount of money made, and we'll divide this into that to get this value, which is going to give you a more accurate value that can be useful. For example, if January 1st through the 5th, let's say, you were having a 99-cent sale, and then the rest of the month it was $2.99, then we would be able to do an averaged value here, which is going to be a little bit more accurate than if you went with just $3.99 in this particular area, because it's not really true that the entire month this was $3.99, and yet that's what we're basing our time frame on. So this just kind of helps you a little bit if you decide to go with a calculated price. The next thing is the estimated revenue control. So there is a number that starts showing up down here at the bottom on both of these guys to give you a little bit of information about estimated potential sell-through and read-through per reader for revenue for that. And what you can do is you can say, I want to be a little more conservative. So if you take this number and let's just drop it by 50% just to show you, you'll see that these values have dropped significantly, well, by 50%. Putting it back to 100%, they come back up again, and you can choose any area in there that you want just to control your own conservative calculation, so that way you can make decisions based how you'd like to. Okay, so what we're looking at here are the blue block is for sell-through and the green block is for read-through. So this is for Kindle Unlimited. This is for if a person purchased the ebooks. This is all based on KDP data. All right, so we have which book we're looking at, the price of the book, how many units have moved, and that includes sales and downloads. And there's a very important point that we're going to get to in a little while regarding this, so keep watching. We also have the sell-through. This basically is saying how many books sold from the previous book. So this 66.67% is saying this is how many books sold since book 1 to book 2. We got 0% from book 2 to book 3. But even though we have a 1 here, well, we can't divide 1 by 0, so we're going to get NA in this particular instance. We have 100% of the books sold from 1 to here, and then we get 300%. How do you possibly sell 300% more books when you can only really sell 100% more books from the previous book, right? It would look like that. But that's just because the people who purchased this book, for example, who are here, the two additional people, let's just say, must have finished reading this book or purchased this book last month or maybe the month prior. And so once they've finished it in our particular time frame that we're looking at, they purchased it here. So it's going to look like there's some inflated numbers because of that. And then, of course, 133%, again, we have the same situation where there are 4 here and only 3 in the previous book. How is that possible? Because the people who bought the previous book bought it outside of the time frame that we're looking at. Now, again, this is just estimated information, so we don't really know specifically when these people purchased a particular book, but you can make an educated guess that it must have been outside of the particular time frame that we're in prior to the time frame that we're particularly in. Okay, and then we move into cumulative. The only difference between cumulative and sell-through, it's just cumulative sell-through, is that instead of dividing this number by the previous number of sales or downloads to get that, we divide this number by the first book. So in this instance, it's always going to be the same because, book 1 to book 2. But then you have the same thing with book 3 back to book 1. So again, since there was only 0, we're going to have 0%. Here, though, you'll notice that it's not NA. That's because, again, this value comes from this divided by this. So it's the fourth book divided by the first book, which says 33% of the people, and that's cumulative. So it's basically just telling us whoever picked up book 1, how far have they gotten through? And you could look at this and start saying, yeah, but this doesn't make a lot of sense here going with this cumulative over that time frame. And you'd be right. This is why we offer you the ability to do much larger scopes of information. So you can say, well, tell me for this year. These numbers become a lot more applicable, especially when you go to all data collected. But there's going to be something a little wacky that happens when I do that. So before I go there, let's move over to page reads. And just keep in mind that we're going to explain this out a little bit better. So looking over at page reads, this is for people who are on Kindle Unlimited. And what we're basically doing here is we see the number of pages that came in for this particular book, that KENPC page rate that you need to enter in for each one of your books. And the reason for that is because we take this number divided by this number, and that tells us how many actual pages have been, or how many books have been read, or full reads we've gotten through our book. Now, sure, you could have the situation where, well, wait a minute, a person only read a quarter of the book and then got, and decided they didn't want to go any further. Sure, that can happen. And so we might have 4 people who did that. But according to the calculations that we are getting paid on, which is what we really care about at this point, what we're getting paid on, those 4 people who only read 25% each still made 1 full page read. So the calculation is still accurate. Now we still have the same thing. We're going to have the same thing going through here. This is basically saying the people who have read this, how many of them read through the next book? How many of them read from book 2 to book 3? And so on. And of course, again, you're going to have the same situation where the numbers are inflated over 100% because we're outside, we could be outside of the scope, where the people who are who read this or are reading this book or have finished reading this book, they finished reading this book outside of that time frame that we have set up in here. Okay, and then the cumulative is exactly the same idea as over here. It's just based on book 1 going all the way through. Now there's something that you might notice over here. It's called Start from this book. And this will allow us to change which of these books it starts from for the cumulative information, which will also impact our calculations down here. I'm going to get to that in just a second, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention because I'm sure you're probably thinking, well, what are those for? So we'll get there. Well, what this is saying real quick is that we have the estimated potential sell-through of revenue per reader, meaning that anyone who buys book 1, we have the potential for them to come all the way through, buying all the way through to the bottom, giving us $15. So for each person who picks up book 1, we have the estimated potential of $15 for just that one reader. And for every person who reads book 1, we have the potential of $6.72. Again, I'm going to reiterate, this is test data and it's a very short time frame. So your mileage is certainly going to vary on what you're seeing as far as this is concerned. Now, taking this a little bit further, we are able then to say how many people are, what are the percentage of people for Kindle Unlimited reads to sales? So it's basically just a calculation to determine the reads to sales up here. It's something that folks had just asked for, so they can have a quick glance to see how that's going. And then we have the profitable Amazon ACOS for starting book. Now, I'm not going to get into the full calculations for this. What I will tell you is that if you read the documentation, you can absolutely dig in and see how this is calculated and so on. And I'll also, again, caution you that these are estimated. I know that I say that a lot, but it's very important because these values are things that you should be looking at and taking, everything with a grain of salt on these things, because these are calculations based on reality, but do you want to be a little bit more conservative by changing these and saying, hey, I get that, I have this potential here, but I also want to be a little bit more careful so I don't overspend and then find out that, oh boy, I should have put less money in it so I could generate better profit. So just something to think about there. Again, for all the calculation information here, please study the documentation that we have on the website, which I will make available at the top of the video, or if you're on YouTube, it'll be under the video there. Now here's where things are going to get a little weird, and we're also going to be talking about this over here, but this is a critical point for you to understand. If we change this to all data collected, we're going to see some strange things happen, and let me show you what's going on. First off, we've just dropped down to 11.57% of the people who picked up book 1 who go to book 2. Now that you're going to be thinking, well, that's because we had sales and so on, but wait, my price was only 40 cents. Hold on, what's going on here? And then we drop down, we go, wow, I only have 3.69% all time of cumulative read-throughs from this to this. And then I'm only going to make $1.19 for each person who picks up book 1, or estimated for the sell-through and so on. So yes, this can happen. Why is this happening? The reason is, You'll also hopefully notice that we picked up a new field up here for you to be able to do a little bit of control work. The reason is because this includes downloads, free downloads, as well as sales. And also 99-cent sales and things of that nature. We market everything towards book 1. So we're pushing 99-cent deals. We're pushing, free book downloads. And we all know that when people grab free books, they end up in a huge pile on their Kindle and may never have been read. And that is the absolute most important thing you can comprehend here, because what this is saying is, of all the people who purchased the book and downloaded free copies of the book, only 11.57% of them actually went on to book 2. So that either means only 7% of them read the book, from up here, which is a pretty significantly low number, and also can tell us some stuff. It can tell us, hey, maybe giving away all those free books wasn't as useful as I thought. Now, that's a shaky argument, because what you could say is, I don't know, because I still had, 5% of those people who got the free books never would have picked up the book otherwise, and they did move on to book 2. So you can look at it that way too, but just keeping in mind that this number and this calculation is saying, hey, we gave away 11,156 books. Well, a combination, because if you do turn this off, you'll see roughly 2,000 people purchase the book, and notice that our price went up because it's actual purchases. But it's also going to show us a rosier number here too, but it's not a realistic number if you're not careful. So what we really want to know is what's really going on with our sales. We can certainly paint rosy pictures by changing all this stuff around and saying, oh, let's up our page reads to 0.005 instead, and do all that kind of stuff. And we can even enter in values over here for that purpose. But it's if we want to have a more realistic picture of what's happening, which is what's going to help our business, we need to know real numbers. And so as we're looking at this and seeing it, this is basically saying 11.5% of people who got the first book, however they got the first book, moved on to book 2. And now you can look at this and go, oh boy, that's pretty abysmal. But I don't think it is, because here's what I then do, and this is why these become important at this point. Once you recognize this and you realize this number is what you're working with, now what you can do is say, okay, so of those 11.57% who did pick up book 2, how are we doing? So now we can kind of click on that and go, all right, this is what's happening with those 11.5%. So what we're saying is, for every person who does move from book 1 to book 2, now we can start to look at these values a little more, they look a lot better than they did, and it can also give us more information here. So what this is really now saying is, what we need to do is figure out a way to increase this value. So could it be that, we want to do fewer 99-cent sales or fewer free giveaways? Maybe, maybe not. It really depends on your particular business goals and how you approach that. I've worked recently with one author who was doing their first book at 99 cents. And their second book was at $4.99, and what we were seeing was a 19% sell-through over the course of a 3-month period. And so what I said was, well, let's take a look at the market. We went through this whole thing. And what I suggested is that they jump this from 99 cents to $4.99, because other books in their series were at $6.99. I said, jump this to $4.99 and then jump book 2 to $6.99. And let's just see what happens over 30 days. I mean, worst case scenario, it doesn't do as well. Well, it jumped to 64% for that sell-through from book 1 to book 2. And you might be thinking, well, sure, but, people at 99 cents, there were probably, what, 200 or 300 sales, and, with this one, there's hardly any. Not true. Actually, it was running at around 72 sales per month. 72 to 75 sales per month, something like that. And it dropped down, yes, it did. It dropped down to between 48 and 55. But again, even at 48 sales, at $4.99, you're making more money than you are at 72 or 75 sales at 99 cents. So you're definitely already making more money right there. But on top of that, 64% of those people were going to book 2, as opposed to 20% or 19% of those people going to book 2. So not only are you making more money on the first book, you're also making more money on the sell-through, because you're getting more people to convert. And so what we determined was, people who were grabbing the 99-cent book, it's not that they wouldn't have loved the book and wanted to jump to book 2. It's probably that they didn't have enough skin in the game. They had another book that they had purchased that was $2.99 or $4.99. And because of that, they read that book. And the 99-cent one, I'll get to that one later, is the mentality, because 99 cents is just not enough skin in the game to make it, I have to read this book because I just put money towards it. That's, $5. And the same thing can go with free books. So, just think about it. Oh, another free book. Well, how many free books do you have on your Kindle? I don't know about you, but I've got, 200 or 300 of them. Will I ever get to read them? Probably not. But every time you see a free book, you're like, oh, this looks awesome. It drops on your Kindle. As soon as I finish reading this one, I'm going to read that one. And then 5 more books later that you get for free, So you have to kind of think about that. And this report can help you to determine that. Now, again, I am going to throw you over to the help file to get further into detail with all of this. It's very important that you understand what's going on there, unless you're okay with the basics of comprehending that if I'm seeing this huge number here and this number here is very low, it basically means that it's true. Only 11.5% of people who got this, however they got this book, moved on to here. And since I know that, now I can kind of look at this and go, all right, so of those people that got to here, here's how I'm doing. That's really the key component to take away from this. And also, of course, all of the things that you change here are going to impact the numbers that you see down here. So I hope that's been helpful for you. And please do check out the help file for additional information. You can actually find that very simply. If you click on Toggle Help System, you will see it right here at the top. And all you got to do is click on that. It will take you directly to the help page for it, which I'll just go ahead and click on real quick. It'll take you to the help page, and it will go over everything for you in that what I just covered. And also, if you decide to, right down here, it's going to go into the section that says Deep Dive, and that's going to tell you all of how things are calculated and so on, so you can follow along with that. So best of luck using the Sell-Thru Read-Thru report.